Hey, here's part 12 of Intro to Programming. In this video, we're going to cover debugging. Now, debugging is a way that we can step through our code at runtime, line by line, and observe what's happening. We can observe what values are being assigned to what variables, what values are being returned by different methods, and a lot more. So this is a great way to find errors or bugs in your code, hence the word debugging. And if you're a beginner, there's a big chance that you haven't done any of this, and I encourage you to learn this now because it'll help you dissect your code and find your errors a lot faster. So let's get into it. So I'm just going to create a simple for loop that's going to count up to 10, and we're going to reassign the same variable a different value on each iteration of the loop, and then we're going to step through that with the debugger and see the values being assigned to the variable. So let's go ahead and create our variable called string my var, and we're not going to assign a value to it just now. Then we'll write the for loop int I equals 0. I is actually, let's equal to 1, while I is less than or equal to 10, I plus plus. Execute this code down here. So let's assign a value to my var equals pass space plus I. So we'll say pass 1, pass 2, pass 3, all the way to 10. Then we'll write that to the console, my var. And let's just run it first and see what we get. So we get pass 1, pass 2, all the way up to pass 10. Now let's actually use the debugger and see how we can see the variable being assigned different values on each iteration of the loop. So to use the debugger, we need to set a breakpoint. And a breakpoint is basically something you set on a line of your code, and it says stop right here and then wait for me to hit continue, and let's look at our code at that point of in the runtime. So to set a breakpoint, we just go next to the line numbers here, and we just simply hit that. And now I set a breakpoint on line 10. So now if I hit run, the debugger is going to stop me on line 10. So now the program is waiting for me to hit continue or to hit one of these three buttons. And we're just going to be, so there's three different actions we can take while we're in debugging mode essentially. And this first one is step into, this one is step over, and this is step out of. First, let's just look at step over because that's the most common. Oh, and I'm going to get rid of those. Don't worry about what those are just now. So to step over means we're going to continue on to the next line of code. And then we can actually see, if you hover over I, you can see that it's equal to 1. If I hover over my var, you can see it's equal to null. And we can pin that value or pin that box or whatever so we can see it without having to hover over it. So that's a great way to see what's happening here. So I'm going to pin both of those over to my right-hand side. And you can see that I is equal to 1 right now. And now we're checking the condition. Is I less than or equal to 10? Step over. Now we're stepping into the code block. So now we're at my var equals pass. So we're now at the point where we're assigning a value to my var, but it still says my var is equal to null. That's because this is just stopping us right here, and it doesn't execute the line of code it's on. It waits for you to hit step over, and then it executes that line of code. So if we hit step over, you'll see that my var will change to pass 1, and it takes a little second for it to register, just so you know. And then we're going to go ahead and hit step over again, step over. Now we're incrementing I, and you can see that I will be equal to 2. Step over, my var is equal to pass 2. You'll see it change in just a second. Pass 2. And we can do that all the way till 10, but if we want to just continue the program like regular, we can just hit continue. So now if we go over here, you can see that it still continued like normal, but we got to actually see what was happening at the runtime. So let's do this real quick. I'm going to write a console.writeLine and a program right here, and I'm going to put another breakpoint right here. And let's just run it again, and our debugger is going to stop us on line 10 again. There we go. And then hit step over, step over, step over. Well, I want to continue on to this right here. If I have a breakpoint right here, and I hit continue, it'll just take me on to the next breakpoint. So you can see the arrow push me on to line 15. So if you have 2 breakpoints and you hit continue, it just moves on to the next breakpoint. Then we hit continue, and then it'll finish our program. So now let's look at the 2 other actions we could take, which was step into and step out of. But first, before we do that, we're going to throw this into a method. And we're just going to make a very simple method called public static void, because we're just printing to the console, print nums, no parameter. And let's just take all of this And quick keyboard shortcut for you. If you hold Alt and then you move your arrow keys up or down, it'll take all the selected code with it. So there we just moved that entire thing into a console or into a method. Now let's call that method and say print nums, and then let's put a breakpoint right on print nums, and then hit run. Now if we hit step over just like we did before, you'll see that it didn't show us anything. It just executed that code within print nums, and it didn't show us what was happening. Well, that's because if it's in a method and we hit step over, it's stepping over that method. And we need to, rather than hit step over, we need to hit step into, and then it'll bring us into that method, and then we can step over with the step over key like we were doing before. So go ahead and hit run again, but this time instead of hitting step over, hit step into, keyboard shortcut F11. Now you can see it brought us down to line 14, the arrow right here. Now we can hit step over like normal, and now we can see the values being assigned, and we can actually dissect this just like we were doing before. And then if I hit continue, it'll execute the rest of the code, just like before. Now let's look at the step out of. The step out of is doing the inverse of step into. So if we're inside of a method with the step into function, and we're going through this and we realize that we don't need to be in here anymore, but we don't want to iterate through this 10 times and have to click 100 times. So why not just bring ourselves out of that method really quickly? Well, we can with step out of. So if we hit step out of, it'll bring us back all the way to here. So now it's executed all of this code and it brought us back to here. And it's already executed this print number method. And now we hit step over, it'll bring us to console.writeLine into program. Step over, into program. It still printed everything out just like normal. So that's a really basic introduction to debugging. Very, very powerful. Like I said, definitely do some more research on this and get more comfortable with it, because it'll help you a lot. In the next video, we're going to do another exercise just like we did in one of the previous videos. So stick around for that. It'll be really helpful.